Hey, what's up everybody? It is Kellen here from Starter Systems and welcome back to MX vs. ATV All Out, where today we're going to be playing the 2020, really the 2019 version of the Ironman National, part of the Pro Motocross DLC package, I think it was called. That was released a little while ago, but obviously the entire season pack has now pretty much officially been released at this point, I believe. So now you can play all these tracks, including Ironman 2020 if you haven't already. Definitely something that you should go check out. But we are going to be rehashing the 2020 Ironman National and talking about everything that happened over the weekend, or as much as I can fit into about a 25 to 30 minute little somewhat podcast thing that we're going to do here, and enjoy a little bit of lovely gameplay in the background while we do it as well. But of course, this is basically a spoiler alert. Like I said, just going to be talking about the race, so if you haven't watched the race yet, maybe not listen to this video now because I'm going to be spoiling some stuff, but just sit back and enjoy some commentary about everything that happened, and always get down in the comment section below and chit chat with us as well. A lot of bench racing going on down there every week that I post up these videos, so thank you everybody that continues to comment, and let's jump into it. So let's start out with the 450 class. And pretty much the big storyline out of that one is Eli Tomac trying to claw these points back against Zach Osborne and really the rest of the field after he double DNF'd at Loretta Lynn's and sat 40 points down in the championship of Osborne, who won Loretta Lynn's 2. And in a shortened series, I actually mentioned this, last week in the video from Loretta Lynn's 2, how, Eli Tomac, he had a pretty long haul of points to claw back in a short time frame, in a short series. Obviously this is only a a 9-race series as opposed to a 12-race series normally, so there's only 18 motos as opposed to the 24 motos that they would get a chance to run. And because of that, Tomac didn't or still doesn't really, I guess, have that much time to claw those points back. And I'd asked you guys, obviously, as the comment question of the day, whether or not you thought Eli Tomac was out of the championship hunt, and I think overwhelmingly the response was no, which I tended to agree with, honestly. 40 points down of Zach Osborne is one thing. If he was 40 points down of Ryan Dungey, I would think, I don't know, man. Dungey's a guy that's pretty consistently going to go 2-3, 3-2, 1-1, 2-3, 1 kind of, throughout the season. Didn't really see Zacho being that guy, and shocker, the first race that we're not at Loretta Lynn's, that's kind of what we see from Zach Osborne. He ends up going 7-3 on the day, and yeah, he maybe had a shot at going 3-3, but I think realistically speaking, Sexton and Cianciarulo were probably going to pass him before Zacho got together with a lapped rider. No question that lapped riders were a bit of a factor for Zacho all day, though. Even in the second moto, in the battle that he was having with Tomac and Barcia and AC again, lapped riders playing a little bit of a havoc for him, so it wasn't like it was all a walk in the park for Zacho all day long, and he still only managed to get a 7-3 score. But that's kind of what I expected to see out of Zach. He may go 1-1 this weekend at Redbud 1, but the reality is that Zach, historically speaking, hasn't been a guy that just goes out and 2-3, 3-2, 1-1 like you do see out of Ryan Dungey, or you probably would see out of a 100% healthy Marvin Muscan, or Ken Roxon if he was here, or Cooper Webb if he was healthy, etc., etc., etc. Those guys that have the championship mentality and stuff like that usually can run up front consistently. So because of that, that's why I didn't think Tomac was going to be out of this championship hunt, being that far down early in the season. And he comes out and wins this past weekend at Ironman. Now, it wasn't, again, a walk in the park for Eli either. You could argue that in either moto, he actually wasn't the best rider on the track. The first moto, I believe Muscan was better. They pretty much started together, and Muscan seemingly every time Tomac got to him could respond to that pressure. And Muscan won the moto, so I think, obviously he was better in that moto, just in my opinion. And in the second moto, Tomac was great. Don't get me wrong, he rode amazing. But Justin Barcia was pretty dang good, and he just couldn't quite find a way around Tomac. So again, I think you could probably say Tomac was the better rider in the second moto for sure, no question about it. But you have an argument that Justin Barcia was also in the mix as well. And what's weird to me about that is when Tomac is on and he's feeling it and pushing the envelope to the Tomac levels that we've seen, he's usually untouchable. I felt like he was pushing the envelope pretty hard in that second moto, and I didn't really think he was untouchable. And that makes me wonder a little bit, like, if we move into round 6, round 7 of this series, and it becomes a situation where Tomac does have to go beast mode, he does have these bad starts that he's, characteristically known for. Not so much at Ironman. It seems like he's got starts pretty dialed there. But he doesn't get good starts everywhere we go. If he starts down the field, he's got to go beast mode and come through the field. Maybe he doesn't, kind of have that same, I don't want to say the same level, because it might actually be that same level. It might still be that same beast mode Tomac we saw that would run down Roxon and Muscan and all these guys late in races before. But we also may just see that some of these guys have raised their game a little bit this year. And in a shortened series, they know that every point counts, and they've got to go get the race wins and the seconds and the thirds and everything that they can get as much as possible, because they don't want to lose too many points to their nearest championship rivals. So in a sense, this championship is actually providing some of the better racing that we've seen recently, I think, just because these guys are willing to go that extra mile to send it. They are looking at championships kind of on the line for the taking that are unorthodoxly so, because this isn't a 12-round championship. It's only 9. It's shortened. They don't know when the series could end. It could even end early if we have some more postponements or cancellations or other things like that. So you got to make every point count. But with that said, Tomac was great this weekend. 2-1. Really, really strong in both motos. The one thing that kind of worried me, I guess, a little bit about it that I still saw is he is being ridiculously hard on his clutches. That was his problem at Loretta Lynn's. It was, again, his problem at Ironman. You saw that bike smoking a lot in the second moto. That's just the clutch getting worn through, and that's the blow off basically of it. But eventually that's going to, fry up inside and, could explode the motor at some point. But Tomac seems to somehow get it to the end, even with those clutch problems, but he was getting pushed by Barcia there a little bit. I'm not worried about his bikes blowing up, because it's been almost a non-issue in Tomac's career. Only in mud races when he's really pushing the clutch hard does it seem to be a problem. But it's something to think about if he continues to be hard on clutches and get in battles, and maybe if there's another mud race or two that grace the calendar, it could be a problem area for Tomac. But yeah, electrifying, good stuff. Gained 13 points, I think, in the championship. I think he's only 27 back of Osborne now. But like I said, he was able to go 7-3 on the day. But my question of the day for you guys is Marvin Muscan, who went 1-6, clearly didn't look like the Muscan we saw in the first moto. But if the first moto Muscan shows up every week, and he only sits, I think he's 16 points down of Osborne in the championship now. If the first moto Muscan shows up every week, is that going to be the guy that we're looking at to challenge Eli Tomac over Zach Osborne? So if Eli Tomac is going to start clawing these points back, are you more worried about Marvin Muscan, or are you more worried about Zach Osborne if you are an Eli Tomac fan that wants him to win this championship? That's my comment or question of the day. Muscan or Osborne, basically who's going to beat who in the points in your opinion? Disregarding where Tomac finishes, is it going to be Muscan beating Osborne or Osborne beating Muscan? Now, I think some people will want to raise the question about, is Justin Barcia a threat for this championship? And I think you can say that somewhat so he kind of is. The reason I'm being tentative about it is we've had 2 mud races, basically, which Barcia's very good in the mud, and Ironman, which Barcia is also very good at Ironman. He has won here before and rides well here every single time we come here and stuff like that. So I'm taking his ride so far a little bit with a grain of salt, and we're going to yet another track that he's going to be pretty good at. He's always been pretty good at Redbud. He has 2 races here. I'm not all the way in on Barcia being a title threat, really, until we get to like WW Ranch probably, and we see where he is in the points and whether or not he can contend for moto wins down the stretch. Barcia in the past has struggled at places like Hangtown and Paula. No Hangtown this year, but obviously we'll still have Paula. And then Colorado, he's been hit and miss with. So I think you look at tracks like those where Barcia has struggled, and you have to say, like, well, if he is a title threat, he still has to be good down the stretch, and he's got to still be in it down the stretch for it to even kind of make an opinion or a difference about it. So I like his chances because he's been riding very well, very strong, but I mean, we still have to see into the second half of the season if he is still right in the thick of this thing, which he very well could be. We could go through both Redbuds this weekend. He could win a moto. He could win a race even. And I wouldn't be surprised at all. And then suddenly you're having to talk about him with 4 rounds left in the championship, maybe being in the title hunt a little bit, because he's, I think, 26 back. Muscan is 14 or 15 back of Osborne. And then Tomac is 27 back, obviously. And those are pretty much your guys this year, I think, at this point. Everything else has been pretty spread out. Jason Anderson may or may not be out of this series with an arm injury. The plate in his arm was bothering him again at Ironman, so he pulled out of the motos, and that's why he didn't race the second moto. Then obviously we lost Max Anstey. Well, I don't know if we lost him. I think he may still try to race this weekend, but big crash in the second moto. Bike blew up in the first moto. Otherwise, he was on the verge of scoring great points in the first moto and maybe onto a good ride in the second moto. Not that I think he's a title threat, but he was scoring good points to this point, and you had to at least talk about him a little bit. So that's it. I think there's 4 people left that might still have a shot at winning this championship, in my opinion. I guess maybe AC you can also throw in there. I don't know, man. I have a tough time believing AC or Sexton are going to win this title as a rookie. They just don't seem to have the same characteristics, if you will, that Ryan Dungey had when he came through and won a title as a rookie. Too infrequent with the starts, too infrequent with running up front, and fading late. Crashing has been a bit of a problem as well for Sexton. So I think it's down to those 4. But again, my comment question of the day to you guys is Muscan or Osborne, who beats who in the points? Because that'll be a tone setter to me for where your guys' head is at in who Eli Tomac is going to have to catch in points. Because if it's Muscan, he's already only like 12 back. If it's Osborne, still got a pretty big points haul to climb, but with 5 rounds still left, or I'm sorry, 6 rounds still left to run, and this doubleheader this weekend at Redbud, this could be a big tail of the championship, in my opinion. I think if Osborne leaves Redbud, both of the Redbuds that is, with more points than he had on Tomac entering, like let's say he has a 30-point lead, leaving the second Redbud, that leaves 8 motos left. I mean, even if Tomac won all 8 motos, it's not enough to catch Osborne at that point if Osborne finishes second every moto. Now, that's stupid math. That's not exactly how it's going to happen, but it gives, more leeway to Osborne then where he can have a bad moto or 2 and still put together good motos down the stretch. As long as Eli doesn't win every moto, Osborne can kind of rely on that point gap a little bit. So it's kind of, that's where I feel like the championship lies in the balance. Is it going to be more or less Tomac just clawing these points back against their will and no problem, he's going to take the lead and win his 4th championship? Or are these guys going to give him a fight down to the final round? That's going to be an interesting one to watch. Ironman, though, was both of the races I thought were really, really good races to watch in the 450 class. Muscan made it exciting in the first moto by basically just keeping Tomac behind him and close. Didn't get a big gap, didn't obviously get past and lose touch with Tomac. It's just those 2 guys kind of going at it, and good to see Marvin pick up a win after everything he's been through this year with the knee reconstructive surgery and missing 357 days of being behind a gate and stuff like that. This early in the championship, it's kind of cool to see that he's already got a win and may very well be a perennial title threat already in just his 3rd race back from injury. But in the second moto, I feel like you just have to give so much credit there to Justin Barcia because he made that race much more interesting than it could have been, because by the time, at that halfway point of the race, Zacho got kind of blocked by a lapped rider, and then Tomac and Barcia both caught AC, and with, I think it was like 8 minutes to go, Tomac finally got around AC, and Barcia wasted no time. He's like, I can't let Tomac get away, so he had to go with Tomac there and get around AC as fast as possible. Made a ridiculously awesome pass by going down the inside of him before the big table in the center, then scrubbed it about as hard as he possibly could, almost fell off the bike and then almost stalled it in the next corner, but that's what he had to do. He was hanging it out trying to stick with Tomac, and then those 2 guys absolutely took off out front. They opened up a pretty big gap on essentially everybody else and battled to the very, very end. Barcia got very close at the end again, but Tomac was just able to hang on. And I love races like that, honestly, where it's like edge of the seat, like you really don't know who's going to win. Barcia seemed to have just a little bit of the edge in the speed, but just couldn't put it all together to maybe get to Tomac and make a pass. Tomac rode a very good defensive race. Like races like that are just really, really fun to watch, no matter who you're cheering for. In my opinion, like even if you're a Tomac fan, I feel like you had to leave there being like, man, that was cool. Barcia made a good race out of that, you know. So I liked it. I think the racing was good overall that we had good racing like that because you know, Hurricane Laura was maybe going to hit the track a little bit and make things worse. It rained fairly heavily overnight before the National on Saturday morning. They were able to get the track fairly cleaned up, which was amazing. Practices were a little bit muddy and mucky, but they dried out, and yeah, we had some good racing, I thought. So finally, we have a dry race in the books for the most part, and hopefully we're looking at 2 more dry races this coming weekend at Redbud. Now let's move on to the 250 class because I feel like we have to at least talk about how this championship is shaping up in a weird terms that it is, I feel like, at this point, because Jeremy Martin's won 2 races on the trot. He's 4 points down to Dylan Ferrandis, but I personally believe that Ferrandis has been the better rider pretty much the entire time. Like, beat Martin in the first moto at Loretta Lynn's 2, just, you know, bad start, couldn't get to Martin in the second moto, and Martin wins the overall going 2-3. And then here, I mean, absolutely clapped him up in the first moto. They started together. Martin was right behind him. Ferrandis got a rare hole shot for him. And, you know, Martin stayed fairly close. I think he was within 5 seconds for the first 10 or so minutes, and then Ferrandis just turned up the heat. And by the end of the moto, he was, I mean, an incredible, like, 30 seconds out front. And I think that really kind of showed the true pace between those two, because I feel like Martin is kind of back to his old level already. I don't feel like he's well off the pace that he once was or anything along those lines. I just think that that's where Ferrandis is at right now. And the reason I feel that way is because the second moto was maybe even more impressive for Ferrandis. Goes down in the first corner, gets up as dead last as you can get. I mean, everybody that he went down in the first corner with was already well gone by the time he finally got the bike rolling. And the entire field was down the next straightaway. He gets rolling, somehow, some way, claws his way all the way up to third before the race is over, and was only 10 seconds down of race winner Jeremy Martin at the end of the moto. So I feel like that right there is quite the indication of where Ferrandis' speed is at in comparison to J-Mart. At least in my opinion, I think he is kind of on another level. And what the difference maker at this point is going to be is starts, which Ferrandis doesn't often get. The first moto at Ironman was a bit of an anomaly, and he put himself in a tricky situation off the start in the second moto by not getting a good enough start to be ahead of his teammate Shane McElrath, who then got sideways coming out of the first corner and put Ferrandis down on the ground with him. Now, Ferrandis in the post-race press conference was kind of like, I thought he felt McElrath blocked him down the start straight, and that was a contributing factor to why they both ended up kind of further down the field coming into the first corner. I don't know why there would be any truth to that. I don't feel like McElrath has any gain in blocking Ferrandis going into the first corner, because McElrath himself is already kind of out of this championship fight, in my opinion. Like, he's well down the points tally. So just get a good start on your own. You don't need to worry about Ferrandis. It kind of seemed like a weird ideology from Ferrandis, in my opinion. But either way, bad start. He just didn't get a jump on his teammate. If he outjumps McElrath there, he doesn't have to worry about him. So the situations with Ferrandis continue to be, he's got to get good starts if he's going to win this championship as easy as he wants it to be. And he was talking again in the post-race press conference about how frustrated he is that he feels like he's the fastest rider on the track and can't win these races. And it's like, yeah, because you can't get good starts. Like, the same thing happened in Loretta Lynn's too, where honestly you probably lost the overall on a bad start in both motos. Like, you, realistically speaking, were the fastest rider on the track and just couldn't get the start to show it. And again, that's what happened in the second moto at Ironman, although this time he really could show it because he basically was on screen the entire time and weaved through everybody to get third in the moto, which was ridiculous. So in the end, he only lost 2 points to J-Mart and retained the points lead. But still, you have to worry a little bit about him, and his good starts, because J-Mart he's a shorter stature guy. He's lighter weight. He's on a great bike this year. That Geico Honda seems like it's got a pretty good engine package going on. And I think J-Mart's going to pretty consistently not find himself outside of the top 5 on starts. Whereas Ferrandis, who knows? He could end up outside the top 20 on starts on some occasions. Or he could hole shot like he did in the first moto. You really don't know. It's a mixed bag with what you're getting out of Ferrandis, because his starts are not always there. Even though he's on a great bike with a great engine package there on that Star Yamaha as well, it's just not the same. I just don't. His reaction, something is up where his starts are off, and that more or less could be the biggest detriment for his title run, because I don't think his speed's off at all. Speed's clearly there. If he starts with or around J-Mart, I think he beats him. If he starts 15 positions behind J-Mart, it's going to be a bit tougher. But obviously he started 39 positions behind J-Mart this weekend and only finished 10 seconds down. So are you worried about Ferrandis? Are you not worried? I don't know where to kind of sit with him at this point. I'm personally of the opinion that he's going to win this championship, and it's not going to be as dramatic as I'm making it to sound. But you do have to be like, man, if his starts don't come around quick, you're going to have to kind of turn your head a little bit and be like, well, if J-Mart keeps starting out front, what are you going to do? Like, he's going to get good starts. He's going to run up front. He's going to pull gaps. And by the time Ferrandis is in a position to see or try to get to J-Mart, the race might already be over. So, anyway, kind of my rant about that, I guess. The other storyline out of the 250 class, though, is basically that nobody else seems like they can compete with these guys right now. I feel like in a mud race, J-Mart and Ferrandis were kind of the guys. Hampshire had a very rough day at Ironman, and it wasn't the best of days either for Alex Martin, who probably considers himself a bit of a title threat. He sits 3rd in the championship. I think Hampshire now sits 4th in the championship. But these guys, they're 30 some odd points behind Ferrandis at this point, and it's, again, a short series. And it's not, to me, it's not like the Tomac situation, where Tomac you kind of expect to win is pretty much his lion's share of the moto victories on offer down the stretch, where I don't think Alex Martin or RJ Hampshire are going to win more motos than Jeremy Martin or Dylan Ferrandis down the stretch. So because of that, you have to, if you're those guys, rely on something to happen to Ferrandis or J Martin. A mechanical, another bad start, but I don't even know if that matters at this point. So I think we're down to a 2-horse race, people. Ferrandis and J-Mart, and it's kind of pick your poison. The guy that starts up front and has a very consistent pace, or the guy that starts in the mid-pack or worse and is the fastest rider on the track. 4 points between them. Going to be an interesting championship fight, no question about it. It's going to be one of those title fights that you feel like it just has a new chapter every week that is amazing. And you know, I'm not saying that I don't feel like Amart or Hampshire or Justin Cooper or McElrath or Jet Lawrence or whoever can't get up there and play spoiler a little bit as well and maybe win a moto or two to kind of ruffle the feathers up here. But I think in terms of consistency, you're already seeing through 3 rounds, Ferrandis and J-Mart, they've only, between the two of them, of the 12 moto scores that they have so far, only Ferrandis is the rider that has finished off of the podium once in a moto, and it was a 4th place finish. Other than that, those two have finished top 3 in every other single moto that has been ran so far. And that's a pretty tough record to beat, especially if they're going to go out and battle for wins like they have been so far. And yeah, interesting championship fight between those two, no doubt. But I did want to say, like, really, really cool kudos, whatever you want to call it, to Jeremy Martin to not only win this overall, which is his 2nd overall win, you know, in 2 weeks, but also the fact that, you know, he came off of a really violent back injury, was maybe even contemplating retirement at some point, and this dude's out here winning motos again, winning overall races, battling for this championship fight. And you could tell it was, you know, kind of emotional for him to get a moto win, and he was pretty happy about it all. He's talked extensively about the fact that during his downtime when he was coming back from the back injury, that he went and got a basically a real job, if you will, working at a local motorcycle shop. I think he was like a parts dealer or something like that. But, you know, you could tell how much more he appreciates the situation he's in, which is cool to see because, you know, obviously in his shoes, he was a pretty highly touted amateur rider, kind of got a lot of things on a silver platter, and came up and pretty much immediately started winning championships, and he's had a pretty rough haul. Really, honestly, since he won his last championship in 2015, it hasn't been easy. He's had turmoil with his former team Star Yamaha, that didn't work out well. Then he jumps over to Geico Honda, gets hurt a couple times. Supercross has been a roller coaster of all roller coasters for Mart. It just never seems to quite work out. And then obviously the huge back injury in 2018 that may have ended his career had the circumstances been a little bit different. But he's back, contending for a championship. Really cool to see him win a moto and see how much that meant to him. And yeah, not only in this 250 class, but the 450 class, good championship fights all around. I like kind of where things are at. I like that there's a close title fight in the 250 class, and I like that maybe the best rider on the 450 grid has some catching up to do. So this Redbud weekend, it's going to be a big telltale sign of the championship. I think, in my opinion, I'm going with Ferrandis and Tomac to win this first round of Redbud, and I'm going to try to squeeze in a review of Redbud 1 in between Redbud 1 and Redbud 2 like I do for these, but those will obviously come out on Saturday or Sunday, so it'll be kind of mixed in. But hopefully you guys enjoy these little podcasts, if you will, that we just kind of talk about the racing, have a good time chit-chatting, and yeah, like I said, answer the comment question of the day down in the description or in the comment section below, and ask any questions that you may have for myself, and I'd be happy to try to answer them if at all possible. But appreciate you guys stopping by, watching another video here on Start Your Systems, and as always, we'll see you guys in the next one. So long for now.